Thank you.
Sure.
Could you just repeat everything you've said so far?
Yeah. Blah, 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 blah. There we go. Fortunately, we're right at the beginning here. So you can see some of the things that I'm going to walk you through and kind of talk about is really what is hydroponics and what does it mean? Growing in a controlled environment is what we recommend always and what probably 99% of the hydroponic growers will recommend. There are a few, particularly in New Zealand, that will grow hydroponically outdoors. But again, most all of hydroponic growers will grow in a controlled environment. Now, I told you a little bit about us, so we'll skim through that part pretty quickly. We'll talk about what does it really look like to operate a hydroponic greenhouse. We'll talk about putting together a business because again, as I mentioned previously, really what we deem a successful grower is someone who can grow beautiful, marketable produce and make a profit doing it. So you can grow beautiful produce, that's not a problem, but if you don't have a market because your inputs are so high, then that isn't a successful business. So just to give you a real quick kind of where I come from, I'm an accountant by trade. So to me, it makes sense and success is operating a profitable business when you're selling a commercial system. So, so there you go. For again, I mentioned that little statistic that 95% of lettuce is grown in California and Arizona. That's our plan is to decentralize that. We're not about putting together a great big farm in Kansas and then kind of shipping it all over. It's about feeding your local community, giving jobs to your local community and reducing the carbon footprint of how long it takes your food to get to the table. So hydroponically speaking, hydroponics, as you've heard, will take anywhere from 90 to 95% less water than traditional agriculture. And that's because it's a completely recirculating system. So when you're putting water in, the water runs 24/7. It runs out of what we call a microtube, and it runs about a 1/2 liter a minute. And that goes 24/7 all the time, but it's recirculating. So it's constantly going through, going back down to the reservoir. It's being tested, and additional acid is going in if they need to lower the pH, or additional nutrients are being added if the plants have taken up some additional nutrients. So it's constantly delivering exactly what the plant needs right to the root system, so that all of the energy of the plant goes into growing as opposed to the roots going out and finding some food. So 90 to 95% less water. Fertilizer, again, because it's on a recirculating system, you use about 65% less fertilizer. And you can get 10 times the amount of produce and the amount of harvest in any spot compared to traditional agriculture. So it doesn't matter. We have customers that are growing on rooftops. We have customers that are growing in arid conditions. We have lots of customers in the Caribbean where their soil doesn't allow them to grow leafy greens or this type of produce in the soil, but they can grow perfectly well hydroponically. So the benefits of hydroponics, of course, are zero soil. So you don't need the soil. It's not a dirty thing. When you harvest, it's a clean product, and clean both in the sense that we don't use any pesticides on it. It doesn't have any of the actual physical dirt on it. And it's clean because what's fed in a hydroponic system is all natural salts and minerals. It's the same sort of salts and minerals that the plant will be getting from the ground as it would be getting hydroponically. So again, I mentioned briefly this maximum growth rate, and that's because the plants don't have to go out looking for nutrients. The nutrients are fed directly to the root system. So all of their energy can go into actually growing. So sometimes you might hear that hydroponics helps plants grow faster, and that's not the case at all. But what it does do is it helps the plant maximize what their DNA allows them to do, or what they're genetically what they're genetically inclined to do, because they don't have to go out spending their energy looking for other plants. 90% less water. There's no weeds. You don't have to do any weeds. There's no bending over or back bending or weed pulling or anything like that. Nutrients, you're not wasting any nutrients because you're giving the plants exactly what they need and they're being recirculated. Again, within the water, it's all being recirculated, the nutrients are. So you're just adding just what the plant needs to continue growing. And commercial hydroponic growers don't use any pesticides. So that's always a plus and a positive. Again, you can see all these pictures are AmHydro pictures that you're looking at here, and they're growing a multitude of things. So there's year-round growth. You don't have to worry about whether it's cold and snowy outside. We have, you all can't see it, but I have behind me on the back of my office, I have both a global map that has a list of all of our customers, and I have the US map that has all of our customers. We have a customer in the semi-Arctic circle who is now growing year-round lettuce and leafy greens to feed his community up there. They are shut off so that during the winter time, no fresh produce gets to them because their roads are cut off by ice and snow. But now here he is growing year-round so he can supply his community with fresh greens. We have lots of customers in the Caribbean, as I just mentioned, where it's often hot and humid, and things won't always grow. Certainly the land doesn't allow them to grow leafy greens, but they can grow hydroponically. The quality of the produce, it's always a top tier quality produce. Again, because you don't have any of the weeds, you don't have any of the pests or bugs if you're managing it properly, and they're getting exactly what they need to grow. And it's in an ideal climate. That's the idea of a controlled environment, is you're trying to create an ideal climate year-round for your plants. And the other thing is it'll offer local employment. It offers living wage jobs for people who can come right in and start learning right from the get-go in an industry that's up and coming. And it's a safe and clean job. It's not, you know, a hard, physically hard or dirty job or something that's unpleasant. You're working in a greenhouse, and with, as you can see, beautiful plants here. So that's another thing that we really like to emphasize when people are thinking about this, and especially thinking about putting up a large commercial project, is hiring entry-level people to start learning how to do this. I'm just going to take a quick little break. Any questions of any kind or comments? All right.
I'll save mine for the end. So.
Okay. Yeah, just jump right in. So this is, as you know, I mentioned the NFT, which is the most common method of growing hydroponically for leafy greens. And that's, as you can see, the recirculating system here. So the plants, you see the plants, the roots, this water right here is what's called a nutrient solution. And this water is pumped in with the correct nutrients and any kind of acid that might need to lower or raise the pH to get it right between that 5.5 and 6.0 range that the plants thrive at. It's pumped up here, as you can see, and then dropped down, and the water just flows directly over the roots. And then it comes back down here and it drops back into the same reservoir where it's then calculated. There's a computer that's in there that reads what the EC is and what the pH is, and it will either inject pH up, pH down, or it will add more nutrient to it. So that's when we say a recirculating system. There's no runoff, there's no wasted water, there's no wasted nutrient. It's all recirculating in this loop right here. And another thing about this is you occasionally may have to what we call flush the tank, and that is maybe reduce the water by half. That water is still perfectly good. So we always tell people, pump that water out into another tank and water the rest of your landscaping, water any other agriculture you have. So the water is still perfectly good. So there really is zero water waste in all of this. So this is a farm. This is the first rooftop farm up here in, it's called Lufa Farms up in Montreal. It was the first rooftop farm ever, and it's a large farm, and they have expanded several times since then. But it's a greenhouse on top of a building. So that's what we call, usually when you talk about controlled environment agriculture, or CEA, what you're talking about is growing in usually a greenhouse. Sometimes you can refer to it in growing indoors in a building that's been retrofitted so that it's horticulturally sound to grow in. But what you are controlling is you're controlling the light, you're controlling the temperature, you're controlling the humidity, you're adding CO2, you might be adding heat, both for heating as well as for reducing humidity. So we have growers down in the Caribbean who have a heater in their greenhouse, not to heat it, but to control the humidity in it. So that's really what CEA, or controlled environment agriculture, means, is that you are controlling all of the components of this growing environment to keep it as ideal as possible to give your plants everything they need to grow. So yeah, American Hydroponics, this is what we do. This is what we've done for the last 37 years, is commercial hydroponics. So again, just mentioned, I told you a little bit about this, but we were actually established in 1984, January of 1984, 37 years ago, in Northern California, right here. And we've been here the whole time. Our staff, all of our staff, they're all growers. If they haven't been growers before, they've spent time out in our greenhouse here to learn and understand really what does it mean, so we can continually improve what we're doing. The other thing about that is if any of our customers or anybody calls up here to ask a question and any of us answer the phone, they get an answer from somebody who actually has experience doing what they're trying to do. We've all had the experience with all the pests and all the kind of diseases that you can matter. Matter of fact, I just had someone on social media ask, what do I do about powdery mildew? And we can easily answer them and say, oh, you want to use a combination of cease and millstop. And if you can't get those at your local nursery, you can certainly get those online at Amazon or something like that. So we all are growers. We have well over 100 years of experience between our staff. Our entire system is all manufactured here in the US. Our channels are made out of a FDA food grade HDPE. So we have customers who have been using the same exact channel in their system for 28 years. The HDPE retains its shape really well. Again, it's the only food grade, it's not PVC. So when you see, can you all see my mouse moving? Okay. So when you see these white pipes right here, this is what I'm talking about. We call them channels. These are what are made out of the HDPE, and these are the ones that will last you for decades, quite honestly. So occasionally when we have, when we say something about the sustainability of what we do, we have people come back and say, well, all that plastic you use. Well, I mean, it is a lot. And you can see this is a 2.5 acre greenhouse right here. There are a lot of channels there, but you know what? They buy them once and they use them for decades. So I mentioned we're manufactured in the US, and we have customers in 66 countries, over 66 countries now. So let's see, I think that's kind of all on us. There's just a little compilation of some of our customers, some of our growers, where they are, and the variety of things that our different customers have put together for their particular growing situation. While we do offer some standard plans, really every project that we put together ends up being a custom project because we want it to be successful in wherever that customer is growing. So this one right down here, this is that Loofah Farms. I was telling you, that rooftop one up in Montreal. This is a school where the kids were actually growing these big, beautiful heads of lettuce. This is tomato plants. This is Gotham greens. If you all are familiar at all or have done any kind of research into commercial hydroponics, you probably would have come across the name Gotham greens. They have a couple of rooftop farms in New York, or in Chicago, and then some various other farms they just opened up. That's a customer of ours, and we helped them get started as well. They're probably one of the best well-known commercial hydroponic farmers. This is just some beautiful lettuce. Again, you can see the different varieties of lettuce in the red and green growing. This is in Utah, and you can see, snow up on the rooftop there. They've got a big, beautiful greenhouse. And then this is a little bit of a unique setup. They have a 20-foot and 40-foot container, and this particular company, Helical Outpost, designed this as a community center. So this is kind of a disaster relief type of container. It has a generator in it. It has Wi-Fi capabilities in it and satellite capabilities. And it has, when you open it up, it has a greenhouse that you can put up and a growing system. The idea is in disaster situations, they can drop one of these units in. It has solar power and it becomes a community center for disaster relief for a third world country where they can set up and grow their own food, as well as having water purification and communication and electricity generated through the solar. So that's kind of a unique idea. And inside this 20-foot container or 40-foot container comes with all those things, the solar panels and everything, as well as a greenhouse and a growing system. So some of our customers, this is just to kind of give you a list of them. If you're familiar with any of the names, you can see them right there. I mentioned Lufa Farms. We have in Japan, we have Nigeria, all over the world. We really have customers. This is Gotham Grains. They've built this in conjunction with Whole Foods Market. This is one of their greenhouses on top of Whole Foods Market. So even even normal hydroponic growers say, well, we can reduce the carbon footprint instead of shipping it thousands of miles across the country. We can deliver it, a couple of miles from our farm to your door, where in this case, it's literally a couple of steps. They're growing all of this is inside the greenhouse. They're growing all this basil up here. They can literally walk down and deliver it to the grocery store. So you can have something harvested and in your hands if you're shopping at Whole Foods in a matter of minutes, within an hour from being harvested into your hands. This is Snuck Farm. They're unique because they have kind of put together an entire community plan. They're a farm. What I love about Snuck is that her father came to the Salt Lake City Valley. It was one of her great-grandfathers, one of her ancestors had a large tract of land, and through the generations, right, it had been all sold off and developed into houses. And she and her husband it's Paige and Brian, she wanted to honor her grandfather with some type of agriculture on this 1.5 acre piece of land. It was the last left of his original homestead. And she wanted to do it with some version of agriculture. And so after some research, she came up with hydroponics. What's interesting about them is they are literally in the middle of a housing development all around them on every single side. And all around them on every single side, you see all of these, new housing and subdivisions. And then you see this beautiful greenhouse growing hordes and hordes of fresh vegetables year round. So
Those butterhead heads are huge.
Yeah.
Absolutely huge.
She does really a great job. She's the first person I ever heard coin the term hyper local. And she is about, I think they're about 25 or 30 miles outside of Salt Lake City. And she doesn't even deliver to Salt Lake City. She just does it there in American River and Pleasant Grove, I think, are the two places. And she does what she calls hyper local. And she hires people right there in her town and she delivers to restaurants. And she just this year during the pandemic built a little farm stand right out front. And people come and pick it up there. But she's the first person I ever heard use the term hyper local several years ago.
Are they doing the standard 2 weeks germination, 2 weeks and 2 weeks in the finishing? Really?
Yeah, and even Gotham does that. Again, Gotham has a total of about 11 acres over 8 locations. So they have to, because of their size, right, they have to keep on this very tight schedule. This is basil they have grown there. But all of our growers pretty much stick to that 2 week, 2 week, 2 week. Some of them, and again, they all have very high-end, high-tech greenhouses where they really are able to dial in that environment so it remains fairly consistent year-round.
Do you supply the greenhouses? How does that work?
So we don't manufacture greenhouses. What we do is depending on where the customer is, when they come to us, we will give all sorts of consultation as to, regardless what greenhouse they want, we'll help guide them of exactly what they need and, what kind of greenhouse. We generally work with a handful of top quality greenhouse manufacturers like Nexus. This house is a Nexus house matter of fact, both these two houses, this house and this house on top up here, greenhouse, are Nexus greenhouses. We work with Atlas. We really like Atlas in Georgia. We work with Agritech. They're out here in near San Francisco. We work with Rummel, all of these North American companies. And depending on where you are in the world, we will really encourage you to find a local greenhouse manufacturer instead of trying to ship one from North America. That just doesn't make any sense. So, but we'll walk you through everything you need, and you can, show us what the greenhouse manufacturer has given to us, and we'll offer our opinion as to whether it's a, really a viable commercial offering or whether it's not. There are a lot of small greenhouses out there that you can still spend a lot of money on, and they're really just not quality commercial greenhouses. So,
wow. Sounds like you have connections to the greenhouses. One of the folks here on the line is probably Brent down there in Tucson. You're probably interested now to put a hydroponics greenhouse in your backyard, right?
Of course, yeah. I was wondering what type of greenhouse coverings do you recommend? Is it polyethylene, polycarbonate, acrylic?
It depends on the type of green. Where you are is the biggest indicator for us.
Sure.
Polycarbonate, as you can see in the background here, this is polycarbonate.
Mm-hmm.
That's glass, right? If you're really going to go high end, this is a glass house right here. This is a very expensive glass house. That's high end. Very few people in North America do a glass house anymore. Then you come down to polycarbonate, and it's twin wall polycarbonate. That's what most of our commercial houses do. Or we do the polyethylene, usually a double poly greenhouse. And that can be much more cost effective if the greenhouse isn't gonna be too big. And then depending on where you are, like our Caribbean customers or tropical customers, we would just recommend an insect screen greenhouse.
Mm-hmm.
So
have you ever recommended ETFE before?
No. Mm-mm.
Why not?
Probably because it's not what the standard greenhouse providers offer. Again, we work with the greenhouse and go with their recommendations. They have engineers on staff. If you have some information about it, I would have no problem at all looking at it. Yeah, send it over to me. Ken can probably give you my email, or I can just tell you my email at the end of this. And let me see, because again, we have no dog in this fight. All we want is for our growers to be successful. And it doesn't mean giving the same exact greenhouse to every single grower. It means making sure that they have a greenhouse that is cost effective and will provide for a long-term business on their end at a high quality greenhouse. So we have no real preference one way or another, other than, we've worked with greenhouse companies that we know provide excellent customer service. That's where we like to send our customers. Solutions for Change. This is in Southern California, and they're a nonprofit. We have a lot of customers, and I put this picture in here because there are a number of nonprofits who use hydroponics as a way of job training and revenue generation. So we do have, matter of fact, we just have a pretty good sized, it's half an acre, greenhouse going up in Connecticut for a large nonprofit, and they have plans to expand to another acre in the coming year. So nonprofits can use this, like I said, as a way of job training and revenue generation. So that's pretty much, we're kind of coming to the very end of it right here. That's pretty much what we do. You can see over here, really, our philosophy is to provide our customers with the greatest opportunity for success. And generally, one of the things you'll find with us is, we have customers come to us with great big plans, and always we will talk them down because it's easy to expand. But if you get a customer that goes out and mortgages, their house and their retirement and everything else for a large farm that they've never done anything with, they could very well fail. And that's not good for us. It's not good for the industry, and it's certainly not good for this person. So we always encourage people, start small. And once you really have it down, it's exactly the same equipment. We don't have a consumer version and a commercial version. It's exactly the same equipment. Start small and expand from there, because it's easy to expand. So we do consulting. We can help, customers understand really what is it going to take them. We generally don't do permitting, but greenhouse companies will help them with permitting. But depending on the size of your project, our consulting and our project management tends to go with the larger, anything ½ acre to an acre size or larger. This is our greenhouse right here in Humboldt County, and we have another. There's a vine crop side of it over here that you can't see, but this is for training for a public high school, a vocational high school, where the kids come in and learn how to work and learn a vocation, and they take their classes in here as well. We do CAD drawings. We do propagation systems that can be used for fodder or microgreens as well, so they're a multi-purpose system. We have what's called crop turn technology, and this is something we're the only ones in the US that offer this. And what the only difference this is than anything else is we do the 3 stages: 2 weeks in propagation, 2 weeks in what we call a nursery channel, and see how close these poles are to each other. And then when they get older, after 2 weeks of growing in here, then you transplant them to what we call our finishing channel that allows them to grow out into the full size of their lettuce heads. So that's what was that?
I'm going to have to jump off on a call, and I just saw Janet has the same thing, but I have just one quick question before I drop. I don't see anything global on the website. Like, how are you selling in the Caribbean or into different other countries? Do you typically have a distributor there, or what does that look like? Is it on a different website?
No, we do everything here because we don't have any distributors. So we have the people, they come directly to us, and we design the system for whichever country they are in.
Okay. How do they, so they just find you on the web? They don't, there's no local.
Yeah, we don't do really we don't have any local distributors. We don't use any distributors. We are it. And yeah, they find us through word of mouth. We're pretty well known in the industry, having been around as long as we've been.
So just to introduce Doug, Doug is the president, I guess, of the Global Chamber, Jenny. So he runs this whole shebang worldwide. So he must be on 200 calls a day, honestly.
Well, it's fascinating because, every day you learn something, and this is amazing. There's you may know 40-acre farms in Cincinnati. I'm not sure, but they just won a global chamber award for some of the innovation they're doing. I'm guessing they probably use your technology, or certainly you
no, 40-acre farms does not. There are several. They use a Dutch technology. The Dutch have been doing this for decades and decades. Yeah. And the Dutch have what's called an automated system. Ours is a manual. The Dutch is a much more expensive system, and it's generally for very large farms, over 5 acres, generally speaking. Ours are for something, anywhere between up to 5 acres. Ours is much more cost effective because we're not fully automated like the Dutch have.
I see.
Jenny, I have a question. So what's the medium that you use for the hydroponics? Is it like the coco coir? I mean, for the plants?
Yeah, so all of these are, if you're talking about for the leafy greens, we use what's called Oasis, just because we prefer Oasis. Rock wool is very similar. It's another one that's well known in the industry. We don't use coco coir generally. Oasis and rock wool are the 2 brands that probably 90% of growers in the US use. Coco coir you can use for.
So as a user doing Oasis, it's much better on your hands. I mean, it's very easy to work with, and it's just fantastic. So
and you don't get the little slivers that you can get from the rock wool.
Yeah.
We do sometimes use coco coir here in the vine crops. You can use it for that. This is where I was telling you the vine crops. This is in our facility here, and there's vine crops over in this side over here. We do sometimes use coco coir for that. Yeah, so I'm just kind of going through here. That's pretty much it. There's just lots more pictures. And if you really are interested in pictures, you know, our social media, again, all of the pictures on our social media come from us or our customers. They're not Photoshop.
I'm sorry, do you provide the nutrient by yourself, or it has to be taken from outside?
No, we actually do make and mix some of our own nutrient. You can use any nutrient, but we also find that a lot of customers have used ours initially, switched to another one, and then come back to using ours. It's all natural. Like I said, it's all natural salts and minerals that we mix here specifically for the type of plant that you are growing, whether it's leafy greens or herbs or tomatoes or cucumbers or something like that. We do have specific nutrients for each one of those.
So when you're having the farms, right? I mean, because hydroponics, you have to have it at like 20 to 20 degrees centigrade. So what's the ideal temperature that you have seen in terms of the highest yield?
What's the ideal temperature for the nutrient solution or for the environment?
For the environment.
Yeah, usually we try and keep the greenhouse during the day somewhere between 72 and 78 is ideal. 78 is a little on the warm side. And at night, it usually drops down to 60-ish, something like that. But again, there can be a bigger window depending on where you're located and what you have. For example, in the tropics, you might have something where you have heaters running just for the humidity. So even though it might be hot, you might have a lot of airflow going through there to help the plants transpire more, because humidity usually dampens the transpiration, which you don't want in your plants.
Oh no, I'm very interested to know in the tropical countries where it's more heat than cold. So getting the temperature to 70s is like, you have to burn a lot of electricity there.
Yeah.
So how do you manage to get to, the 70s? Because when the outside temperature is, let's say, hundreds, right?
So you can use a lot of airflow. We have a large farm outside of Bangalore. No, it's not our farm. It's our customer has a large farm outside of
Farm 2050, I know that.
Yeah. So that's our customer. That's one of our, we've worked a lot with the founder of that. And they have a wet wall, which provides some humidity into their greenhouse. So they run the wet wall, which is, I don't know if you know, but it's like corrugated cardboard on one end of it with water going through and air going through it to cool off the air. But they have very hot, warm temperatures there. And we've increased their airflow by increasing the number of fans they have in there, because you're right, you can't necessarily lower the temperature down. So we were there, Joe and I were there, and it was very warm in the greenhouse, but still very beautiful. Matter of fact, let me just look real quick. I want to say that today's picture on social media is one that Basan just sent us from his greenhouse in Bangalore. And you can see the type of produce. Let me just look at it really quick. Yeah, so if you look at, I know you guys probably can't see this, but I'm gonna, you can't see it, but take a look at our social media. Today's picture, that just came to us from Bangalore, growing in a tropical climate there, and it's beautiful lettuce. And you do that through managing your environment, either through additional airflow or, like I said, a wet wall at the end of the greenhouse. There are ways, depending on where you are and what your situation is. Another thing you can do is put a chiller in the water, so that the environment is not necessarily low, but the water is at a temperature that the plants will uptake all the nutrients that they need from there.
So I was going to ask a question, and then I had somebody to introduce themselves. So in some of these big greenhouses, do they use beneficials to take care of their pests? I see you're showing off kale there. That one is a hard one for pests.
Yeah, so that's actually chard. I have a much better picture of kale.
Okay.
That is really beautiful kale.
Yeah.
So beneficials, absolutely. So depending on the size of your greenhouse, if you're in a larger commercial greenhouse, you'll have a whole, it's called an IPM program, an integrated pest management, that you'll just get on a schedule and you'll do these things repeatedly. Again, it will be very different depending on where you are based in the country. Right now, we have a big problem with powdery mildew because we're in Northern California, and while we get maybe nice sunshiny days, we get very cold, damp nights. And so that's ideal conditions for powdery mildew. So we have that problem. But yeah, depending on where you are and what your particular issues are, we can help you identify what you will need to do at what times of year. For example, just a super easy one is if you have aphids, right? Usually we'd recommend once a month releasing ladybugs into your greenhouse. Ladybugs, they're really the only viable option to rid yourself of aphids.
Excellent.
There are sometimes, I will just tell you, it's a funny little fact, there are sometimes ladybug shortages in the world. And sometimes sometimes you can't get ladybugs, but we are, for example, set up on a program with Copert they just once a month ship us a box of ladybugs that we then release into our greenhouses.
Copert. Okay.
Yeah, Koppert.
Okay.
Yeah, we have other options too for getting some kind of beneficials if you're looking for them.
Good. And then everybody else kind of introduce themselves. I'm hoping I can get Jim to introduce himself if he can come off mute and introduce himself to everybody here. Nope, there he is.
Hey guys, I was in another meeting earlier and just was able to catch the last part of this, but
Really glad you made it.
I am from Ceres Greenhouse Solutions, and
Oh, great.
yeah, we have the type of greenhouse that pays attention to energy usage.
Nice.
And so, you know, especially in the northern climates, it's about 50% insulated, and even the glazing that we use is about double the insulation value of most others. So we insulate them, and we have thermal storage that goes with it. So, you know, we face our greenhouses south since the other surfaces are insulated. And then those other surfaces on the inside, they reflect the light back in. So it actually has more light and more heat retention, and more temperature retention one way or the other. But yeah, and we work also with AM Hydro, and whenever a client wants to do hydroponics, we recommend them to do it. So
very good.
Hey Tim, it's Brenton Brunel with AGC.
Yeah, hey Brent.
How you doing today?
Good, good. Good. Yeah, that's the other thing. He asked earlier about ETFE greenhouses, and that's one of the things that our greenhouses can do is we can put ETFE glazing on as well. And if we do 2 layers, it gives us about the same R value as a triple wall polycarbonate.
Nice.
Yeah, so you didn't probably know, Jenny, that you were going to have so many famous people on the line.
Fantastic. That's great.
So so any other questions for anybody here, I guess, from anybody?
I have a question. Jenny, I'm curious. I saw that the Whole Foods picture with the hydroponics set up on top of the store. Do you have any franchise owners like Subway, McDonald's, Taco Bell who are doing similar things?
Yeah, so we don't actually, let's see, where's our Gotham Greens picture? It's not here. Yeah, so we don't actually do any franchises or anything, but what we do have is, there it is right there. What we do have is customers who are specifically selling to franchises. We have one customer who is selling, and it's a very specialty product, who is selling to In-N-Out Burger, iceberg lettuce. And iceberg lettuce, it's an anomaly hydroponically speaking, but it's something that they've set up, and they're it works for them. Again, it's a little bit of a different animal in the hydroponic world, iceberg lettuces. But yeah, and we have customers who sell to clearly Whole Foods, Sprouts. We have one customer, well, we have several customers who sell to different regions of Sprouts markets, if you've heard of them. Costco, we have a lot of customers who sell to Costco. So we don't have any franchises, but we do have customers who sell to the larger, you know, chains, whether it be a grocery store or a restaurant or anything like that.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Any other questions or thoughts? Anybody who has had?
Jenny, so all of your greenhouses are doesn't use any of the artificial lighting, if I'm right. So could you talk on that? I mean, did you see any of the yield improvements when you have an artificial lighting versus the natural light?
Oh, we do use supplemental lighting in almost all of our greenhouses. All of our, most all of our greenhouses include supplemental lighting. You can see this right here. These are supplemental lights. While we always recommend greenhouse growing because we feel it provides a superior product, plus we also know that it provides a much quicker ROI. But there are times, like I mentioned in the beginning of the, when I came on, excuse me, we have a customer growing, excuse me, we have a customer growing in the semi-Arctic circle. Clearly they use supplemental lighting during the winter, like months right now. So yes, almost all of our commercial growers use supplemental lighting, and that helps maintain that 6-week crop turn of 2 week, 2 week, 2 week.
Is there a specific brand of the lights that you recommend for this? Or?
There is not. We always bring in lighting experts, and we have relationships with several, both LED as well as just plain horticultural HPE lights. It depends on the customer's budget. Really, LED lighting are very expensive. And when you're talking about as many as a greenhouse will require, they're very, very expensive. A lot of cannabis growers can afford LED lighting, but food production, their margins aren't as large as cannabis. So, especially for supplemental lighting, you probably don't see a lot of greenhouses with LEDs in. But mostly they're just the HPS lights, the horticultural lighting.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay. Well, I think we've kind of kept people a little long anyway, but it was just super to have you, Jenny. I do.
Yeah, my apologies again for my tardiness. I'm so sorry.
We got you online, so we appreciate you joining us. And Todd, I don't know if you want to kind of sign things off here.
Oh, great presentation, Jenny. Really appreciate it. Really fascinating.
Thank you.
I've been able to have the experience of eating some of the lettuce that Ken grew, and for me, it was like this aha moment. And comes to find out that I was more aha than anyone else, but I was just really impressed with how it was able to stay fresh in the refrigerator for so long. I'd never seen lettuce stay that fresh, and I actually kept watering it. So for me, it was a real aha.
Great.
But I thought it was fascinating. It was really interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. Can I just say, if anyone does want to get a hold of me for any reason you have questions, it's just Jenny, Jenny, @amhydro.com. I'd be happy to answer any of your emails.
And I did put that in the chat for everybody. I think it's still up there somewhere, but yeah, there it is. Okay, well, thank you everybody for joining us in 2 weeks. I don't think we have our speaker lined up yet, but just keep notice on who on some of the website and emails just to catch up with us. I do think this is kind of a fun thing just to get together and enjoy each other and enjoy somebody's business and their presentation. So. Again, Jenny, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for inviting me.
And
yeah, and anybody else who's attending, if you have a business or if you have anything that's global that you're doing that you'd like to introduce, just get in touch with me, todd@globalchamber.org, and we can get you set up.
Jim, I'd love to have you come on at some point and give us a full presentation of your greenhouses, because from what we've seen, they're just outstanding. So
yeah, I'd be happy to.
Yeah, and Jim, you have some great technologies too. I think people would be interested in what you do with some of your systems that will pump ground heat and things like that into a greenhouse.
Yeah, that would make it interesting.
That'd be a really good one.
That'd be really great. So
yeah, I think the Northern Colorado Global Happy Hour is turning green.
Well, some of the other topics, if people are interested in it, there is a fair amount of interest in hemp on the board, and some growing there. Certainly out in the Greeley area, there's a fair amount of interest in hemp there. I think unless you have deep pockets, I think the cannabis rush is over. So, all right, everybody, have a fantastic evening, day, morning, wherever you are in the world. But thank you so much for joining us today.
Great. Thank you guys so much for inviting me. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.